Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin with appreciation to TorahAnytime.com for their giving us a platform to teach Torah all over the globe, to Kol Lashon, for its worldwide network, YouTube, our subscribers, our Zoomers, and those of you that are joining us here in our flagship station at Agudas Yisrael Beis Zev of Fairways Lakewood. Tonight, we have a very special sponsor, a dear Talmud of mine for a long time, Ari Presser and his family. They're diamond sponsors. Lili Nishmas, the grandmother, who had the schus of living till 101. Chaya Bas Tzvi Elimelech. Her neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. She should be a Militzi Yeshara for her family, for all of us and all of Klal Yisrael. The Presser family should enjoy such longevity, and they wish all of us to have such longevity. If you would like to sponsor one of the shiurim that are heard and viewed by way more than 1,000 people a week, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. I just want to add that I made a comment last week when we said ve'ela shmais is v'chayev adam lahashlam ha'parsha shnayim mikra v'echatargim, and we spoke about why it was alluded to in the second Chumash and not in the beginning of the Torah in Bereshis. So I made a comment that I never saw, although I'm rather an expert in the word Bereshis, I never saw a hint to Shnayim Mikra V'echatargim in the word Bereshis. So I sent an email by Menachem Wolf, who was in my shul in the 80s, and he said that he saw that Bereshis, actually the Beis and the Saf, the first letter and the last letter, Beis and Saf, stands for Beis times Torah, 2 times Torah. And the remaining letters in the middle, right? What remaining letters in the middle? Reish, Aleph, Shin, Yud, stands for Aleph Rashi, and 1 time Rashi. So there you have it in the word Bereshis, Beis Torah and Aleph Rashi. What an amazing thing. And now we're going to talk about something that I'm sure bothers many people that learn these parshiyos. Vayedaber Elikim el Moshe. Parsha starts off that Elikim spoke to Moshe. Elikim is Midas Hadin. Indeed, Rashi says, Shediber Isai Mishpat. He spoke to him judgmentally. Al Shehikshav L'daber V'loimer, that he questioned Hashem and spoke, saying, Lama Harei Osa Lama Zeh. Why did you do bad to this people? Now, judgment it was. Retribution it was. Moshe, with his sparkling career, with his incredible accomplishments, he lost dearly for saying, Lama Hariyasa, Lama Azeh, Lama Azeh Shlachtani, why did you send me? Because at the end of the parsha last week it says that Hashem told him, Ata Tireh Asher Esa L'Paro. You will see now what I will do to Paro. You'll see. But Rashi says, Rabbeinu Shalom was precise. He always is precise. Ata Tireh. You're only going to see this geula. Ata means now. with an ayin, not only this. But you're not going to live to see the defeat of the 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael. You're not going to merit because you did this. You said Lama Ariyos, Lama Zeh Shlachtani. You lost the right to lead Klal Yisrael and conquer the 7 nations. Now, we understand the complaint against Moshe Rabbeinu for saying Lama Hare Osa Lama Zeh. Why did you do bad to this people? We understand that. Because there's no Ra by Hashem. Hashem doesn't do bad. Ra means bad. There's no Ra. No Ra. Called the Ovid Rahman L'Tava. Whatever Hashem does is good, ultimately good. Right? Like we know that Yaakov was also punished and lost 33 years of his life because when Paro asked him why he looked so old, so Paro said, Yaakov said, I'm not so old. Ma'at v'roim yemei shnei chayei. I'm only few years, but bad years. And again, for saying bad, Yaakov lost 33 years of his life. There's no bad by Hashem. As the Welt says, there's bitter but not bad. You could say bad, bitter, but not bad. There's no bad. And we know that the fact is that ultimately, the fact that they had to search around for straw and work harder, although it looked like it was a real downgrade, it was a real torture, it was the best thing for them. Because they were only in the 209th year. They were supposed to stay in Mitzrayim for 400 years. Kigeya zaracha beretz lo Elohem, va'avodim v'inu ha'isam arba me'ah shana. So this whole generation was supposed to die in slavery. But the Kushi Hashibud, because they worked so hard, that made up for the missing years. As we all know, the famous Gain. The pasuk says, "Vayemoru es chayayim." He embittered their lives. Bitter. And the trup of Vayemoru es chayayim, the musical cantillation on the top of Vayemoru es chayayim, is Kadma v'Azla. Vayemoru es chayayim. That's Kadma v'Azla. Kadma v'Azla means Kodam v'Azal. That the Gula came quicker, it preceded itself. And the Gra says, I'll prove it to you. What's the gematria of Kadma v'Azla? The gematria of Kadma v'Azla, Kadma is 145, it ends with an aleph, and Azla is 45, so the gematria is 190. So it came quicker 190 years. It was supposed to be 400. We went out at 210. Communion Redu is gematria 210. We went down from Mitzrayim for 210. So the truth of the matter is it wasn't Ra. If he didn't intensify the Shibud, they would never have gotten out. They would have died in slavery. So indeed, there was a time on Moshe Rabbeinu that he said, Lama Hariyos Lama Zeh. But there was a time on him also that he said, Lama Zeh Shelachtani. Why did you send me? Why did you send me? Listen, send me when it's time to take them out. Rabbeinu Shalom, you set me up. You set me up to fail. You set me up for them to hate me. Let's face it, that's what happened. I promised them that I'm going to go in your name, and look what happened. I went in your name, and all of a sudden their situation became much worse. You set me up. Why'd you do that to me? Now, even though it's probable that Moshe Rabbeinu told them that Hashem says Paro is not going to listen. Because if you look at the pasuk, it says, "V'daber Aaron es kol advar asher dibra Hashem el Moshe." Aaron told them all what Hashem said to Moshe. And Hashem said to Moshe that Paro is not going to listen. He's not going to send you away. Right? And it probably includes what Hashem said, "Ani yodati ki lo yitein eschem melech Mitzrayim laloich," that He's not going to let you go out. But the Chizkuni says that they thought that at least that after Moshe Rabbeinu went, the situation would lighten a little bit. It would start to get better, not to get worse. And so Moshe Rabbeinu said, why did you do this to me? This question always bothered me. Why did Hashem set up Moshe to fail and cause that Klal Yisrael should be angry at him? Set him up. So as a Rav, an idea came to me that Hashem was teaching Moshe Rabbeinu that sometimes as a Rav you have to do things even though the people are not going to like you for it. Yeah, that's the job of a Rav. So, I'll give you an example. A simple example. The people in the shul, they don't want mishaberachs. Every person gets an aliyah, he makes a mishaberach for this one and that one, and if he's friendly with half a shul, he starts saying half the people in the shul, they don't want mishaberachs. So they go over to the Rav and they say, let's cancel the mishaberachs. We'll get out of here 10 minutes quickly. You know, it's very important to get out of shul quickly. Let's cancel all the mishaberachs. The Rav says, no, we're not canceling the mishaberachs. That's very unpopular. Truth of the matter is I once said to somebody, your children turned out very good. How do you know it wasn't because of all those mishaberachs that you made for your children by the Sefer Torah? How do you know? Now, I could think in my career unpopular decrees that I made. I made a decree in my shul that you can't make an ofruf 2 weeks before the chassan. That became stylish today, because especially if people are making weddings out of town, so it's hard to make the ofruf right before. So they want to make the ofruf not the week before the chassan, or 2 weeks before the chassan. So I felt that it's important to preserve, if you look in the Minhagim say that the reason why we do the Bavarfen is because the week before the chasana, they brought the chassan to a special shar in the Beis HaMikdash. It's a week before the chasana. So they said, that's the minig. So, but I wasn't a martinet, I wasn't a dictator. I said, you could make a party 2 weeks before. Just, we're going to make a difference. You can't throw bags. I'd offer if you throw bags. You can't throw bags 2 weeks before. Oy, did I get pushback? Oy, did I have people upset with me? A Rav, this is a very important thing. In today's political climate, many politicians take polls, and they let the polls guide their actions. A Rav doesn't do things because of public opinion. There's a famous word from Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. I believe it's Rabbi Chanan's word. It says in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, Pnei Dor Pnei Keller, that the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. So Rabbi Chanan said, I think it was Rabbi Chanan, Pnei Dor means the leaders of the generation. The leaders of the generation will be Kepnei Keller, like the face of a dog. A dog always checks back to see his master. It says leaders today are always looking back and seeing if it's okay with their constituents, if it's okay. That's not the way that Jewish leaders lead. You have to know that they can't lead by public opinion. Now, this shouldn't be confused with the idea that you can't do something that the majority of the tzibur is not up to. That's something else. You can't make a gezeira she'ein tzibur yochel lamed bo. You have to take into account the level of the congregation, what they can handle. Don't give them things that they can't handle. That's different. I remember that when we were building my shul, so I said that if you want to make a urinal, you have to put a stall around the urinal. And people made fun of me. Stall around the urinal? Nobody has a stall around the urinal. So I said, going to the bathroom is an action of an animal. And you do that in private. And if we're going to have a urinal, there's going to be a stall around it. And people were saying, what kind of crazy thing is that? So I remember the one who did the plumbing, he's a Chaver Adaf, A.B. Spry. A.B. Spry put his foot down and said, I don't understand you. If the Rav says you need a stall, so you put up a stall. Now later I would find that was Moshe's opinion, that a urinal should have a stall. But you can't rule and be a manig according to pleasing people. Now, I thought to myself that this could be pshat, but it's a chiddush. And I was very gratified to find this pshat by one of the great leaders of Klal Yisrael. I found this pshat. There's a pirush on Chumash written by the Netziv. Netziv was one of the most remarkable leaders. The Netziv was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin. Volozhin was the mother of all yeshivas. The greatest iluyim of the world, greatest geniuses, went to Volozhin. Only one person in a town got into Volozhin. So that if you had a very special son, but your town, Krakow, already had someone, if you wanted your son to get in, you had to move. People moved in order that their son should get into Volozhin. And he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin. But Volozhin was also a major city. And he was the Rav of Volozhin. That means besides giving shiurim and dealing with all these geniuses, he also took care of the Bikur Chaylim, the Chevra Kadisha, the Kashrus, the Shechita of the huge city, Volozhin. At the same time, he also wrote amazing svarim. He wrote a pirush on the Shiltus, which is an incredible pirush. He wrote a sefer on Chumash called Hamikdav. So now that we know that he was a great Rav in Rosh Hashiva, so what does he write on Hamak Dover? That Moshe Rabbeinu over here was being set up. So he writes, V'hamanig tzorach lahanig, the leader has to lead, af kishaloi haven atzibur, even though the community doesn't understand it. The community doesn't understand it. It means that a lot of times, not a lot of times, but a Rav has to do things that is not popular and will cause people not to like him. You know, there's a famous word from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said that if everybody likes the Rav, he's not a good Rav. If nobody likes the Rav, he's not a mensch. But it's not a popularity contest. That's why the system of voting in a Rav to renew his contract every few years is not a simple system. Because if the Rav is going to have to always worry what people are going to think about him, he's really not going to be able to rule al derech emes. It's not really such a great system, but a system there has to be. Now, along these lines, the training of Moshe Rabbeinu as a manhig, I had another kasha. We find a really unusual thing in these parshiyos, that Paro asks, please pray for me to remove the plague, and I'll let your people go. And it says Moshe Rabbeinu goes out, the Esa es kapai, and I raised my hands and I prayed. What's going on over here? Could you imagine asking Rav Elchanan to pray for Hitler? Could you imagine asking the Tosis Yom Tov to pray for the Polish monster Chmielnicki? Could you imagine asking Rav David Feinstein to pray for Osama bin Laden? You have to understand, some people have this roly-poly idea of power. Power was a monster. Fact of the matter is, he took 150 babies in the morning and 150 Jewish babies in the evening out of the nursery, slaughtered them, slit their throats, and bathed in their blood in order to cure his leprosy. He was a monster. He told midwives to commit infanticide. He buried our children in the walls of Pitam and Ramses if we're short bricks. He was a monster. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu put into a position that he had to go and pray for Paro? Why would Hashem do that? And I always felt it was a training. Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to train you to pray for people even though they hurt you, even though they're not good to you. Because that's what Moshe Rabbeinu would do constantly for us in the Midbar. We treated him very poorly in the Midbar. Moshe Rabbeinu said about us, Oid ma'at uskaluni, a little bit more they'd stone me. Gemara says that they kol echad ve'echad kina es ishtai. every person warned his wife not to be near Moshe Rabbeinu. They suspected him of adultery. You know what it says? It says that Moshe Rabbeinu said, Torchachem, Masa'achem, V'rivchem. V'rivchem, which literally means quarrels. Rashi says, Malamid Shayu Roignin. They were always complaining. Whatever he did wasn't good. And yet, about this generation, Moshe Rabbeinu said, forgive them. V'im ayin, if not, mecheni na mesifrecha. Erase me. Erase me. He put his whole existence on the line for these people that were giving him such trouble. You know, if you remember, Yisro said that what you're doing is not sustainable. Yisro saw that from morning to night, the 600,000 people, and then the women, they were coming to Moshe Rabbeinu from morning till night. He says, you can't live this way. It's not sustainable. He says, it's going to wear you out. It says Moshe Rabbeinu was masking. The famous question is, what were they coming to him? Famous question. I mean, there were no din Torahs. There were no businesses. I mean, you know, today we have businesses, we have din Torahs, there are contractors, there's hasagas gvul, there's pizza shops, there's real estate. There was none of that in the Midbar. Nobody worked. Nobody had a business. What were all the questions from morning to night? We all ate the mun. That's all we had was the mun. We had sukkahs in the Midbar. There's no real estate fighting. What was there busy from morning to night? So there's different pshatim. Some say that they were arguing over the correct distribution of the bizas hayam, the booty from the sea. They were arguing about it. In a footnote to the biography of the Chafetz Chaim, it says that they were fighting over shidduchim. He was busy with shidduchim. Especially in the first generation, there was a law of loisosiv. You weren't supposed to marry out of your shevet, so there was a limited amount, and everybody wanted the choice shidduchim. But the Ramban says, you know what Moshe Rabbeinu was busy with? So Ramban says, it says in the pasuk, Ki yavay alai ha'am lidroish Elokim. They're going to come to me to seek Hashem. Says the Ramban, lispalal al chayleyan, to pray for their sick people. And by the way, you shouldn't be surprised that that's morning to night. If you ever had the zechiyah to see the Skvera Rebbe in Muncie in action. Skvera Rebbe is very knowledgeable about medicine. And people who have lo yaleinu, sick people in their family, converge on Skver every night. Skver Rebbe is up till 3, 4 in the morning meeting with hundreds of people, the long lines, every night. It's an amazing thing that there's an individual that sits and listens to people's service in the middle of the night, every night. It's amazing to see such a person. Hashem should give him kaya. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing. He was busy. Says the Ramban, he was busy from morning to night. There was a Skver Rabbi wasn't seeing 600,000 people. They were coming. People were sick. They were coming to him. And here they treated him poorly. And he's praying for everybody. He got a training. Hashem said, you're going to pray for Paro. You're going to learn how to pray for Klal Yisrael. You could pray for Paro. You could surely pray for Klal Yisrael even if they're not behaving. And the truth of the matter is that that's the role of a Rav today. A Rav has to be there for a person even if that person is a mechutzav. Even if the person is a mechutzav, his son needs to get into yeshiva, he has to help that family. Even though this person, when the Rav gets up to speak, he opens up a big Gemara, and in front of the Rav he starts learning. It's a big mechutzav. If that person needs help, the Rav has to be there to help him. Moshe Rabbeinu is an example. And by the way, there's a very important lesson in this. And the lesson is Rabbanus is not for everybody. People think if there's a bacher that knows how to paskin, he learned halacha, got a smicha, and he knows how to give a good speech, he's an automatic Rav. But it's not so simple. Not so simple. You know, Rabbi Wein, can't believe he's not here. Say Tzadik L'Vrachas Chusi Yagan Aleinu. It gives me a pleasure to say something over in his name to cause Sibsais of Doivavais Bekever. Rabbi Wein used to say, if you don't like people, don't become a Rav. Simple as that. If you don't like people, don't become a Rav. You might know how to say a great drasha, you might know how to paskin. If you don't like people, you gotta like people. Got to deal with all kinds of people. You don't like people, don't become a Rav. So now I'm telling you something else. If you can't pray for somebody that's not nice to you, don't become a Rav. Rabbi Wein also said something in his pithy way. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Get out of the kitchen. Now, by extension, this is also true to a gabbai. A gabbai has to like people. Some people like a gabbai, they like to be in the position to give out honors. They want to serve the tzibur. But you have to know that the gabbai is very important in the shul. He's like a quarterback in the shul. You know, just like a woman, she defines the aura of her home. That's why she lights the candles before Shabbos, because she's supposed to set the warmth of the home. So Fia Halicha is basic. The Gabbai creates a ruach in the shul. If he's a martinet, then the shul is going to have a tense avir. It's going to have a tense aura. That's no good. If the Gabbai tells someone to be quiet, and the person isn't, and the Gabbai takes it personal, and then has a vendetta against a person, he's not made to be a Gabbai. Gabbai has to be able to be nice to people even though they're nice to him. And this is, of course, multiplied tremendously by a Rav. It says in Bamidbar, Parak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Beis, Ki saimar elai sa'eyu b'cheikecha kasher yisa ha'oimein es hayonik. You said to me that I should carry them in my bosom, like the nursing mother carries her child. Which means Hashem is telling the manig, just like the mother that carries the child is not good, doesn't sleep, doesn't let them sleep. You don't take it out on the child. That's the way I expect you to take care of the tzibur. What does Rashi say? That you should do it Almanas sheyu cyclen eschem umecharfim eschem. It's an unusual Rashi. You should take care of them although they stone you and they disgrace you. And the Sifsei Chachamim says, Ratzaloyme shetiyu soivlin mehen. You should tolerate them. That's the job of a Rav. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. People treat you not nice. They vote against the raise. Treat you not raise. Still have to be good to them. This is not an easy thing at all. So it's not a job for everyone. The truth of the matter is that this is not just a speech for Rabbanim, but in our generation, this is also applicable when it comes to children off the derech, which we call kids in pain, kip. We ask for parents to do something counterintuitive, to show them love, love, and love. Here they are, they're shaming their parents. They're being mechalel Shabbos. They're getting tattoos. They're piercing their noses and their tongues. You're asking the parent to show love. Ramosha would say, if you lose the relationship, you lose everything. And everybody would quote the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish says that you have to bring them close ba'avoisai sa'ava, with cords of love. Rav Avadia Yosef says that love keeps the door open for return. But all of this is really very hard. And could be, I'm suggesting, that this could be the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was asked to pray for Paro. The man that tried to kill him, right? Paro tried to kill him. For killing the Mitzvah, Paro arrested him. He already had his head on the block, and the executioner's knife was coming down. Just a miracle happened, and Moshe Rabbeinu's neck turned into marble. That's why he called his son Eliezer. So here's a man that tried to cut his head off, and he's praying for him. That's some training. Now let's turn to the Makkos. This week's parasha starts the Makkos. So we have to understand that one of the great lessons of the Makkos is Midah Keneged Midah, measure for measure. As Yisro would say later on, Ati Yadati, now I know, Ki Hashem Hu Elokim, that Hashem is God, Ki Badover Asher Zodu, that which they perpetrated, Alehem, came back and haunted them. Now when there's Midah Keneged Midah, although the Reader's Digest would like to explain all of the Makkos and natural phenomena, but the fact that it's Midah Keneged Midah precludes any element of chance. And even Paro believed in Midah Keneged Midah. That's important to know. Because in his famous final solution of Hava Nischak Moloi, let's deal wisely, he strategized. We're going to punish them with water. Because God promised that he wouldn't bring a Mabul. What kind of a strategy is that? So he won't bring a Mabul. He'll do something else. He'll bring an earthquake. So Paro says no. Because God only does Midah Keneged Midah. So we're going to hamstring God. So even Paro believed in Midah Keneged Midah. The Rambam says one of the studies, the main studies of the Makkos, is to see how they're Midah Keneged Midah. So when you come to the first Makkah of Dam, Medrash Tanchuma says, why did he turn the water into blood? Because we know that Paro's whole strategy was to stem the incredible population explosion of the Jews. They're having Shisha B'Keres Echad. They're going to outnumber us and join the enemy. We got to stop this population explosion. So the Medrash Tanchuma says the first thing he did was he outlawed the mikveh. Outlawed the mikveh. He said, listen, he found out that if a woman doesn't go to the mikveh, she can't be intimate with her husband. So he outlawed the mikveh and he stopped them going into the water to be toivel for the tumas dam. And since he stopped them to go into the water to cleanse themselves from the blood, from the nidas, the water turned into blood. Of course, there was more to Paro's madness. He said, and if anything, those that do sleep without going to the mikveh, so then they're going to be punished by God. Right? Hashem hates. Sonei Zima. So it's a win-win. That's the Tanchuma. That's the Midah Keneged Midah of the Tanchuma. It's not the obvious Midah Keneged Midah. The obvious Midah Keneged Midah is that the water turned into blood because they threw our babies into the Nile. Every child should be thrown into the Nile, so the Nile was full of Jewish blood. So therefore the Nile turned into blood. The only thing is that those babies that they threw into the Nile didn't die. A miracle happened. And they sprouted back out of the ground. It says, Rivava kitzemach hasoda nisatich. The myriads. Like the tzemach hasoda, like the growing of grass. So you could say, okay, but they thought to make the Nile full of blood. However, when I get excited, it's that time of the year that I could break out my favorite Haggadah and quote from the Per Aaron, favorite Haggadah that has, I believe, 9 Pirushim on the Haggadah. And one of the Pirushim that he has is Per Aaron, which is all Gematria and Ramazim. He was murdered by the Nazis. It Zeichet Tzadim Kodesh L'Brachas Chusi Yogan Aleinu Hashem Yinkum Damai. So the Pe'er Aaron says, it's beautiful. He says the Makkah of Dam was because Paro, we said, in order to cure his leprosy, killed 150 babies in the morning and 150 babies in the afternoon and bathed in their blood. So he used the blood like water, so therefore the water turned into blood. It's such a simple midah keneged midah. However, we have to know that in the Makkah of Dam, there was another, the Makkahs are multifaceted. There was another level of punishment in the Makkah. And that is, it says that before Hashem does battle with people, he does battle with their God. So they worshipped the Nile. You have to understand, in those days they were very practical. And they worshipped what gave them benefit. Now, Egypt was called the breadbasket of the world because it didn't depend on rain, because it was irrigated by the Nile. So therefore they worshipped the Nile. Li Yaori, Pharaoh said. They worshipped the Nile. And therefore first Hashem punished the Nile and turned it into blood. And this fits in with a Ritva. This is a very fascinating Ritva. You know, by the Seder, we say, as Hamoifsim Ze Adam, the wonders, that's blood. And then we quote a pasuk from Yoel. And it's one of the times we take our pinky and put it into the wine and say, Dam, v'eish, v'simras ashan. Blood, fire, and pillars of smoke. And it's not clear what we're saying. So the Ritva, one of our great Rishonim, the Ritva says, it says as ha-moifsim ze adam, but moifsim is in plural. So what does it mean, plural? What was it turned into blood? What's pluralized? As ha-moifsim ze adam. So says the Ritva, the blood became the fiery, and smoke came out. And that's what it says, Dam v'eish v'simra zashan. It was blood, it was fire, and pillars of smoke. Why did Hashem do it? Make the Nile to burn and smoke up. What do we say in Dayenu? If he didn't do against their gods, if he didn't punish their gods, Hashem burnt the Nile. It was a god, so he gave the god Sreifa. You have to understand the Makkahs. The next Makkah was frogs. Says he, Anoichi, Nagav kol gevulcha b'tzvardem. I'm going to smite your whole border with frogs. I found a Shmois Rabbah, a Medrash, that something I never knew about the frogs. It's my, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I never knew this angle of midah keneged midah of the frogs. But in Shmois Rabbah, people that say Tillim all the time are familiar with this pasuk in Tillim. If you want to look it up, it's Perek Ayin Ches pasuk Mem Hey. It says, Utzvardeya v'tashkisen. The frogs will come and destroy them. Now what does the Rashi say in the pasuk in Tillim that the frogs will come and destroy them? It's Rashi in Tillim. Look it up. Rashi says 2 words. Shoimtim beyehem. It will pull off their manhood. Their frogs came and ripped off their testicles. That's what Tashchisein. Destroyed them. And it's really Rashi's sources from the Shmais Rabbah. This Shmais Rabbah. Shmais Rabbah says, that's why it says in the pasuk, B'chadar mishkavcha v'al mitasecha. They went into your bedrooms and on your beds. They removed what you usually do on the bed. Oh boy. Now we understand the incredible Midah Keneged Midah. They tried very hard to stop us from having children, so that Tzvardeya castrated them, disabled them from having children. And also, by the way, it fits in the lashon of a tashchisa, because hashchasa means sexuality, right? It says, "Batishaka yisa'aretz lifnei elikim." By the Mabul, the world was promiscuous. I'll tell you an interesting thing, that this idea is embedded in the word Tzvardeya. This is my own thought, so if you don't like it, I won't hold it against you. But it's embedded in the word Tzvardeya. Because what are the middle letters of Tzvardeya? Pei Reish Dalet, Pered, a mule. A mule can't have children. Embedded in the middle of Tzvardeya. Also, if you remember that this was the function of the miraculous tzir, which we're going to learn later on, that when they did battle against the 7 nations, the tzir went and castrated the Canaanites. In the word Tzvardeya is also tzir, tzadik reish. So it's all there in the word. But the Midah Keneged Midah now of the frogs is so obvious, because they tried to stop us from having children, so therefore Hashem took away from them the ability to have children. However, before we continue, I should again thank, with tremendous, so big supporter of mine, Ari Presser and family, for being diamond sponsor, Lili Nishma's grandmother, Chaya Bas Tzvi Elimelech. She should be a good Tibeter and have a lichtige Gan Eden. And again, remind you that we're looking for a sponsor for Bo. We don't have any sponsors yet for Bo. So the way to sponsor is to text me, 718-916-3100, or email me at rmmwsi@aol.com, Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss, Staten Island, at aol.com. I've said this in the past, but we can't have a clarity of the Makkah of Tzvardeya without knowing this Abarbanel. The Abarbanel says that it says Tzvardeya in the Parsha of the frogs precisely 10 times to tell you that it was as bad as all the 10 plagues put together. Now, this is a very big novelty, because if I would ask you to study the plagues and say which one, before you knew this about chomping on the bayim, if I would ask you which one would be most tolerated, you would think, well, not wild animals, not killing hail, not darkness that freezes me to the spot, not having any water, not lice, not boils, not death of the firstborns. Frogs, okay, could deal with squishy frogs. Frogs here, frogs there, frogs everywhere. Okay, I mean, if I have to deal with something, frogs. Says the Abarbanel, frogs were worse than all 10 makas. How do you understand that? So the Abarbanel says, Al dvar hatzvardim asher sam leparo. So it doesn't say al hatzvardim, it says al dvar hatzvardim. The word of the tzvardim. It says that tzvardim made noises incessantly. 24/7. And your bedroom was full of tzvardim 24/7 for 7 days. Each one croaking in a different pitch. It's like being in a room with 100 alarm clocks, each going off with a different noise. They weren't able to sleep. They went insane. It was a fate worse than death. That's what the Barbanel says. You have to understand. So I found something this year. To me, it's just fascinating. I'm sure many of my listeners are going to be fascinated by this. I found a Tana de Be'elio. The Tana de Be'elio says, what noise did the Tzvardeya make? So Tana de Be'elio says the Tzvardeya made the noise cuckoo. Kuf vav, cuckoo. And it dawned on me that this is probably where the phrase cuckoo comes from. You know, we say this guy went cuckoo. Well, after the Tzvardeya made these sounds incessantly, people went cuckoo. It's interesting because I did research in etymology. You could do research in the secular. They say that where does the phrase cuckoo come from? So they have another pshat. I like this pshat better. They have another pshat. They say it comes from the cuckoo bird. There's a bird, it's pronounced cuckoo, not cuckoo, it's pronounced cuckoo. This bird does a meshugana thing. It lays an egg, and it places its egg in other species' nests to have other species raise them. So that's crazy. So that's where they say that cuckoo comes from. But I like this pshat better. It comes from the way now, what's the Mida Keneged Mida? The Mida Keneged Mida is because they gave us such pressure that we broke under the pressure. Remember we said, it says Perach is Gematria 300. It says Perach twice. We had to do 600 bricks a day. If we were short a brick, they took one of our children instead. That's the pressure. They drove us insane with the pressure. And therefore the Tzvardeya was Mida Keneged Mida. Kinim, lice, was a Mida Keneged Mida because they didn't allow us to bathe. We became lice infested. So therefore they were punished with lice. I found an interesting thing in the Imre Pinchas from the great Rab Pinchas Mikaritz, that he says Kinim is the parush. Now you might not be familiar, but a parush is a flea. And he says that that's why it's called parush, because it has in it the word paro. And it dates back to the punishment the fleas by power. This would, of course, take a very, very diabolical level in time of the Black Plague, where scientists would later say that all the death and devastation was from the fleas. And we'll conclude with the Makkah of Arav. All of a sudden, Hashem unleashed that amongst us came all the animals which usually would not come into society. All of a sudden, wolves and bears and lions and tigers started coming in the streets. This was to teach the Mitzvim, you're acting like animals. You became, they are now very comfortable with you. That's why Orov, the etymology of the word Orov, Ayin Reish Vav Beis, is spells Bora. In them was bad. You behaved like animals, and therefore the animals will join you. You're just like an animal. That's the lesson of Orov. I want to really thank everybody for joining us and remind you that we just started Menachos. Please come and try to join us. We have a Zoom Daf Yomi. You go to zoomdaf.com, put in meeting code capital RMMW, all capitals. Join us every night at 8 o'clock for our learning of Masechtas Menachos. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful Shabbos.